Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and we are into a new month, which means the Weird Fun Bag is back. It is number 15 in the series, and as always, 3 stories pretty much unrelated, but they're fun. And so I wanted to share them with you. Today we're looking at the stories of Victoriano Alvarez, Emilie Sagee, and our first story will be of Gil Perez.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
Gil Perez was a Spanish soldier who was assigned to guard the governor's palace in Manila in the Philippines, even though their governor, Gomez Perez Dasmariñas, nailed it, he had just been assassinated at sea by Chinese pirates. But despite that, Perez and his men were told to continue guarding the palace as everyone waited for a new governor to be appointed by the Spanish government. As Perez stood guard on October 24th, 1593, he started to feel dizzy and exhausted, and so he decided to just lean back against the wall and kind of close his eyes in an attempt to just regain his composure. Well, when Perez opened his eyes, he found himself in a very different place. Rather than being in the Philippines, he was now sitting outside of Plaza Mayor in Mexico City, which, if you didn't know, is on the other side of the planet. A group of Mexican guards quickly found him wearing what they thought was the wrong uniform, which it was if Perez had actually been a Mexican guard. He wasn't. He was a Spanish guard. And so they started questioning him. At this point, news of Dasmariñas' death had not actually reached Mexico because it's 1593 and it takes months for that kind of news to travel. And so Perez, he's trying to tell them, he's like, yo, I want you guys. The governor, Dasmariñas, he dead, but I was guarding his palace in the Philippines and that's where I was and I don't know why I'm here. And so like, they don't believe anything he's telling them. Like they think he's crazy. Mexican authorities quickly threw Perez in jail and charged him with desertion and being a servant of the devil, because why not? He stayed in jail for several months until news of Dasmariñas' death arrived by ship from the Philippines. One of the passengers on that ship actually was taken to the jail and immediately recognized Perez and claimed that he had seen Perez in Manila the day after Dasmariñas had died. Thanks to that testimony, Perez was actually released and allowed to return back home to the Philippines. Now, this story, obviously, could be 100% made up, and it probably is. But this story was passed down over several generations in Mexican culture before it finally actually gained mainstream attraction in 1908 thanks to folklorist Thomas Allibone Janvier, I don't know, some dude, who recounted this story in an edition of Harper's Magazine. In turn, Janvier originally found this story from Luis Gonzalez Obregon's collection of stories that was published 8 years earlier in 1900. Obregon, he claimed that his story came from a 1698 account by Fray Gaspar de San Agustin, Spanish names, like if I could just say Spanish names in my English accent, it would be so much easier. But I'm trying to be respectful and say it the way that, you know, Spanish people would say it. And so, like, I really just want to say Fray Gaspar de San Agustin, but that's not really. It's Fray Gaspar de San Agustin. You know, it's got that flair to it because they made it real complicated. Anyway, it's beside the point. The 1698 account by de San Agustin noted that Dasmariñas' death had actually been known in Mexico on the same day that he had died rather than months later. But there's no way communication was that fast in the late 1500s. There's no possible way that some dude would get assassinated at sea and then people on the other side of the planet would know it the same day. No chance. Today, this story is widely accepted as fact by people in Mexico. Morris K. Jessup and Brinsley Lepore Trench, 8th Earl of Clancarty, both suggested that Perez had been abducted by aliens, because obviously. Colin Wilson and Gary Blackwood, two other noted non-scientists, suggested that Perez had actually teleported from Manila to Mexico City without actually explaining how that would have happened. If this story is true, no one has any clue how this dude got from Manila to Mexico City in a single day. It's probably one of those like little folklore tales where some details got mixed up along the way. Probably not true, but there's a ton of people in Mexico who will fight you on this and say that Gil Perez teleported from the Philippines to Mexico because the governor died or something. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. In 1845, Emilie Sagee had been working as a teacher at Pensionat van Nieuwelk. Probably, yeah. Pensionat van Nieuwelk, which is an elite boarding school in Latvia. By all accounts, Emilie was not only very well liked at the school, but she was also super hot and super smart. All right, she's got it all, bros. She's super hot. She's got the brains, dude, and everybody loves her. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Anyway, however, the one downside to this was that this was Emilie's 19th different school in 16 years of teaching. So she's transferring schools all over Latvia, maybe even in other parts of Europe, every single year and sometimes twice in a school year. And the students at this school in Latvia soon learned why. So one day, as Emilie was writing on the chalkboard and facing away from her class of 17 girls, this person that looked exactly like Emilie just appeared out of nowhere. I don't know if she came through the walls or just walked in the door or whatever, but she seemed to just accurately imitate Emilie's movements. And although everyone in the class could see this happening, Emilie seemed completely oblivious as to what was going on. This same apparition was later seen sitting beside Emilie as she ate, sitting in the classes that Emilie taught, and in other parts of the school where Emilie was performing other various job duties that she needed to do as a teacher. The biggest sighting came during a sewing class when 42 girls watched as Emilie came in to observe the class while the teacher left the room for a moment. You remember that? Remember when a teacher had to go poop or something and another teacher just came in while everyone was reading? You think we didn't know? You think we didn't know what was going on there? Teacher be like, all right, read the next 50 pages. Mr. Smith is going to come in and just watch you guys for a bit. I've got to go take care of something. I'll be right back. And they were pooping. They went to the teacher's lounge and they were pooping. All right. So their teacher in the sewing class, she's off pooping. She gets Emilie, she thinks, to come in and watch the kids while she goes and poops. And everything was cool, except the problem was that it wasn't Emilie, because the students could clearly see the real Emilie Sagee out in the garden. Some girls were crazy enough to walk up to whatever this was that looked like Emilie and touch her. And when they did, their hands went right through her, and it felt as though they had like stuck their hand in a cobweb. So it's just like, it's soft, but it's kind of sticky. And it's just, anyway, you get it. As word got around about Emilie's evil, weird twin, parents of the scared children began moving their kids to a different school. Eventually, just as had happened with her previous 18 teaching positions, Emilie was fired. Since the story was made known, people theorized that the doppelganger appeared to do tasks that Emilie was doing in an alternate universe. So that's people be like, oh yeah, there's multiple universes and there's like a warp in the time-space continuum and there's a wormhole and Emilie Sagee's other dimensional being was kind of like reflecting in our universe and we were seeing what she was doing. Okay, dork. Anyway, others believed that this doppelganger was an extension of Emilie's spirit that had become detached from her body. And if that like actually happened to people, that'd be crazy. Like imagine being so mentally unhealthy, but like still functional, but so mentally unhealthy that your consciousness or your spirit like detached from the rest of you and just like appeared beside you doing things that it probably wished it was rather be doing, you know? And then you have a little twin that maybe you see and maybe you don't. Maybe you don't see it, but everyone else does. That would be wild. It's not true because nothing else has ever happened like this. Obviously, there's a lot of doubt as to whether or not this is a true story. There are no actual concrete records of anyone named Emilie Sagee ever existing. Although the school in Latvia, Israel, the Pensionat van Nieuwelk, was real, is real. I don't know if it's still around or not, but there's records of that existing. The majority of the evidence from this story comes from a single medium who, in turn, didn't provide many specific names of students or faculty at the school. It's just like, oh, yeah, it's just some other teachers and some other students. They saw this and definitely not lying right now. So, but a lot of people, like this story has, again, like the last one, this story has survived and a lot of people think that it's true and actually happened. So our final story here, beginning in 1858, France, Britain, Mexico, and the United States all kind of like squabbled over the ownership of Clipperton Island, which was this 2 square mile atoll nearly 600 miles west of Mexico out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? Like just absolutely in the middle of nowhere. But all of the countries placed a ton of value on the island's supply of guano, which is bird poop, that they wanted to use as fertilizer. You know, the United States is claiming it because like, manifest destiny or whatever. I don't know. Mexico claims it because it's like Mexico's basically technically the closest to it. France and Britain, they claimed it because they just wanted to claim the entire world. So they're all trying to claim this island. The United States and Britain gave up their hopes for the island in 1897 and 1910 respectively. And then when that happened, France and Mexico signed an arbitration treaty, leaving the final decision of the island's ownership up to King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy. And again, like it's one of those things where it's like, it's one of those unfair European treaties. Like, of course, the king of another European country is probably going to side with the European country, especially if the other side is, you know, a colony or like heavily influenced by maybe one of your enemies. And I don't know if Spain and Italy got along. No one ever got along at various points throughout European history. So I don't know. But while King Emmanuel III was kind of deciding on who would get this island, Mexico sent a group of 13 army soldiers over to the island in anticipation of winning the dispute. So they're pretty confident that they're going to win this island. So they're just going to go ahead and preemptively start sending people over to set, you know, operations up so that they can start harvesting this bird poop. This is totally real. Here's the thing, guys, unlike the first two stories in this episode, this one's 100% real. All right. There's no doubt that everything I'm telling you absolutely happened. So 2 countries vying for an island full of bird poop. Their wives and servants of these 13 soldiers soon followed. And this group of Mexicans spent the next few years building up a small civilization on this island. Unfortunately for them, however, the Mexican government was actually spending most of their time focusing on the growing Mexican Revolution, which left this group of 26 or so people on the island to fend for themselves, and things were not going well. Supply ships had stopped coming because, various issues with the revolution, supplies and resources are being diverted to other places. The island's community garden had been destroyed by various, storms and other elements, because it's like it's an atoll, right? Like there's not soil on this island to begin with. It's just sand. And so you've got to figure out how to build a garden in nothing but sand and salt water. Like you've got to purify your own water and all that. So they're struggling. Even more, the few palm trees on the island were not producing enough fruit, which resulted in most of the residents developing scurvy. People began dying, which then forced the other islanders to bury the bodies in deep sand to prevent them from being picked apart by the crabs that lived on the island. Acting governor of the island, Ramon Arnaud, was then reluctant to abandon the island, mostly because they only had one boat and they didn't have enough fuel to reach the mainland. One day, however, Arnaud spotted a ship in the distance and convinced 3 of the remaining 5 men, because everyone else had died, right? Like there was 13 soldiers, 8 of them had died already, or 7 had died already, but he convinces 3 to join him on the lone boat to go get help. However, by the time the men reached open water, the ship was nowhere to be seen, and there was actually no evidence that a ship had even been passing by in the first place. So it may have just been a mirage, and they're all like delirious as it is, dehydrated, malnourished, and so now they're 4 dudes, very angry now, out in the open water. The 3 soldiers with Arnaud angrily tried to overpower him and take his gun, which actually did not go well. Several of the women back on shore watched this struggle from a distance and saw every last one of them fall overboard and drown. To make things worse, a hurricane came roaring toward the island within the same hour, and Arnaud's freshly minted widow went into labor with their 4th child. So this woman in particular is having a bad day. A lot of people are having a bad day on this island, right? Like, they don't have very many people left as it is. 4 of the dudes have just died. The dude who was in charge, his wife, goes into labor after watching her husband drowned, all in the middle of a hurricane. All right. And it was probably the hurricane that sent her into labor, because I have it on good authority, based on personal experience, that drops and huge fluctuations in atmospheric pressure can affect pregnant women and send them into labor early, because that's what happened with my wife. I'm certain of it. Right. Like there was, when Finn was born, there was this like low pressure. It wasn't a tropical storm, even though like it was late August, but it was this low pressure weather system that came through, and the atmospheric pressure fluctuated a lot. And she, like, her due date was like September 3rd, and Finn came 4 days early. And I'm pretty sure it was because of the atmosphere and the pressures that did it. So anyway, that's beside the point. So there's this hurricane going on. This widow is going into labor. They end up surviving while the group was hunkered down inside Arnaud's basement in his, I guess, governor's mansion. I don't know, he didn't really have governor's hut. Once the hurricane had come through, they emerged the next day to find all of the other buildings on the island completely destroyed. As the women then surveyed the damage, the island's creepy, ornery lighthouse keeper and the last remaining adult male on the island, Victoriano Alvarez, he came out to survey the damage. He quickly rounded up the leftover weapons and tossed them into a lagoon, like ruining them, leaving only a single rifle for himself. He then announced that he was the king of the island and that everyone was now his slave. Since he had the gun, everyone basically was forced to listen to everything that he had to say and go along with it. So Alvarez quickly developed a dictatorship, and when a mother and daughter refused to obey his commands, he raped them both before shooting and killing them. So, like, he's serious. And Everyone else left on the island, regardless of their opinion, was regularly beaten into submission. And over the next several months, Alvarez would take turns with various women on the island as his own personal sex slave, including 13-year-old Rosalia Nava. Somehow, Alvarez kept all of this up for 2 more years. So, like, it's a dwindling, unhealthy population on this island. There's very limited supplies. People are malnourished. They keep dying. But this crazy, like, insane old lighthouse keeper has taken all of these women hostage and as their slaves, and he's just like this crazy island king. In July 1917, he decided that his next girlfriend, after he was done with the 13-year-old, his next girlfriend would be Alicia Rovira Arnaud, who was the widow of the former governor on the island. Alicia, however, was not at all on board with that plan and organized an escape on July 18th. Accompanied by her 7-year-old son, Ramon Jr., and Tirsa Rondon, who had actually been Alvarez's most recent sex slave. So he got done with the 13-year-old. He moved on to Tirsa Rondon, and now he's trying to get with Arnaud. But she and Rondon set off for Alvarez's hut, where she kind of planned to act as though she was coming to begin her girlfriendly duties, like, okay, Mr. Alvarez, I come to suck your pee-pee. I am here to be your slave. Taco flavor kisses. It's a great South Park bit. Anyway, but she's not really. Like, it's all a ruse. As Arnaud and Alvarez talked, Rondon sneaked past and grabbed a hammer from inside the hut. And then Arnaud, she gives the signal, and Rondon pops out and beats Alvarez over the head with this hammer. However, he's a dude. He's probably taking most of the food. He's way bigger. He's way stronger than these 2 women. And so he shakes off the attack, grabs an axe, and starts chasing Arnaud around the island. Ramon Jr., he sees all of this happen. He goes and grabs Alvarez's rifle. And as he's doing that, Rondon finally incapacitates Alvarez enough to then allow her time to find a knife and stab him repeatedly until he was dead. As the group stood over Alvarez's dead body, like this crazy ending to a movie, they saw the USS Yorktown, an American gunboat who was actually out searching for German U-boats for World War I. Like, we're already off into another conflict. That's how long they've been on this island. They see the USS Yorktown appear in the distance. They see, the people on the Yorktown see the people at Clipperton. They tried to send a rescue boat to the shore, but I guess with the waves and the shoals around, they were unable to reach the island and retreated. At this point, the people on the island, they think that, the boat just gave up and they're never coming back. And so they kind of started contemplating to just shoot each other rather than starve to death on the island, because at this point, they have no more supplies. It's almost impossible to grow food or whatever. Everything sucks on this island. But before they could make that decision, the Americans returned and successfully rescued everyone who was left off of this island. And also, if you do care, King Emmanuel eventually awarded Clipperton Island to France in 1931, but by then, even the Mexicans had very much given up on trying to do anything with this island.
All done.
There we go. The 15th weird fun bag in the books. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie about Clipperton Island yet. Or maybe they have and it just wasn't very good. But that would be a good action movie. Some creepy old Willem Dafoe looking old lighthouse keeper. Or, probably do that Pablo guy that everybody loves now. What's his face from The Last of Us? That guy. Everybody loves him. Let him be the old creepy lighthouse keeper. Let him have a range. Let him show some range. But yeah, that I think that would be a pretty intense movie. just people killing this old lighthouse keeper, and then the ship appears in the distance, and they're like, oh no, they are not coming to save us. We should just kill ourselves. And then they don't do it, and then they get saved, and everybody's happy. All because of bird poop. Anyway, let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Well, I guess I already covered the first one. That Clipperton Island and had a lot of bird poop and some crazy stuff went down. Anyway, number 2, Gil Perez. Did he teleport magically, paranormally from the Philippines to Mexico? Or was it just a weird little folklore story? I don't know, but people in Mexico sure believe it. And then number 3, Emilie Sagee. Are doppelgangers real? Can our consciousness exit out of our bodies because of all the stress and stuff we're under and make people think that we're out doing some stuff when the real person isn't? I don't know. It's weird. It's also probably not true, but a lot of people still think it is.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, we are looking at some strange natural disasters from history. It's bad enough that we got to deal with dorks and weirdos making life difficult for us, but now we've got the earth turning on us in strange ways outside of like all of the other ways, like hurricanes and tornadoes and blizzards and such. But looking at 4 stories next week of some odd natural disasters. We're looking at Lake Nyos, Lake Penyor, the Carrington event, and Galeras, which is a mountain. It should be called Mount Galeras, but they just call it Galeras. Anyway, you get it. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends, and keep it weird.
This is a podcast